All right, let's move on now to what we call lesson number 7 in the curriculum, and that is, are miracles possible? Are they signs of God or gullibility? And as you know, this is the third question of the big 4 questions. Does truth exist? Does God exist? Are miracles possible? And then, is the New Testament true? Let's go back before there was any mass communications, any electronic communications. In fact, let's go back to, say, 500 years ago. Back in Europe, if one king wanted to communicate to another king over a great distance, how would he do so? Yeah, a courier. He would send some kind of message. And what would be on the message? A seal, right? There would be a seal on the message that would authenticate that the message came from the first king. If there was no seal, the king receiving the message couldn't know if it really came from the first king. Now, it seems to me that the seal would have to have at least 2 qualities. It would have to be unique to the first king, and secondly, it would have to be hard to forge. Because if you could forge it, then you could send false messages from the first king, right? Well, this is what I think miracles do. Miracles are a seal from God that says, this guy speaks for me. And miracles, quite obviously, are hard to forge. This is something only God can do. You say, well, how do we know this? Well, if you go to the Bible, this is exactly what happens when it comes to, say, Moses. Moses says, to God, you want me to go to Pharaoh and say, let my people go? Why is Pharaoh going to believe me? What does God say? You're going to be able to do miracles that will ultimately convince Pharaoh that you speak for me. In other words, when you look in the Bible, the purpose of miracles is to confirm something, confirm a prophet. The miracle confirms the message. The sign confirms the sermon. This is the primary purpose of miracles in the Bible. Now, when we look at the Bible, we just kind of read through it. We think, at least I think, generally, without really analyzing it, we think miracles are happening all the time in the Bible. Are they? Well, how many miracles are there in the Bible? Let's just go from, say, Moses to Jesus and the apostles. That is about 1,500 years. How many miracles are in that time frame, approximately? Anyone know? About 250. Give or take, depending upon how you count them. Some are bunched up, some are lumped up. But let's just say 250. Now, if you get 250 miracles over a 1,500-year period, how often do you get a miracle? Math majors? One miracle every 6 years, right? You get one miracle every 6 years. That's 250 into 1,500. But is that the way they occur in the Bible? You get a miracle, then 6 years of nothing, then another miracle, then 6 years of nothing, then another miracle, then six. No. How do miracles, or when do miracles occur in the Bible? When do they occur? If you notice, when God is doing miracles through people, not when he's doing them directly, sometimes he does them directly, but when God is doing miracles through people, he's doing them in 3 basic time frames: around Moses, around Elijah and Elisha, and around Jesus and the apostles. Moses, Elijah and Elisha, and Jesus and the apostles. Why? These are new prophets that need new confirmation. There's a new message that needs a new miracle. There's a new sermon that needs a new sign. And that's why people will say, hey, Moses speaks for God. Look, he does miracles. Hey, Elijah must speak for God. He's able to do miracles. Hey, Paul and some of the other apostles can do miracles. They speak for God. That's how they would know that this person speaks for God. Notice in the Bible, there is never a miracle done for entertainment purposes. There's never a miracle done for the personal edification of the one doing the miracle. Paul can't even heal his own thorn in the flesh, whatever that was. And there appears to be a time when even the apostles couldn't do miracles anymore. Paul says to Timothy, take a little wine for your stomach. Well, if Paul could do miracles, why didn't he just heal him? Paul talks about pray for so-and-so, he's sick. Well, if you could do miracles, Paul, why don't you just heal him? Because miracles were always in the control of God, and they were there for a reason. They were there to confirm a prophet from God. Now, I'm not saying that miracles can't occur today. That's a whole other topic. In fact, there's a new book out, actually a new massive book by Craig Keener, who teaches at Asbury Seminary out there in Kentucky. It's 2 volumes, 1,200 pages long. There are several chapters in it on what he thinks are good evidences for miracles today, okay, from an academic perspective. But that's not the point we're talking about now. What we're talking about now is what were the purposes in the Bible? And it appears they were there to confirm a message from God. Now, some believe, of course, that miracles are impossible. For example, Noah. How can you believe the Noah miracle? Seems outlandish. I actually believe it occurred. In fact, I went on this Noah's Ark expedition with my friend, Bob Cornuke, back in 2006. We had intelligence that there could have been the remains of Noah's Ark in a mountain in Iran. You say Iran? I thought it was on Mount Ararat. If you look at the biblical text, it says that the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. It doesn't say Mount Ararat. In fact, Mount Ararat wasn't named until 1200 AD by the Armenians. And Ararat was an area that could encompass from the Mount Ararat in Turkey all the way down into the Elburz Mountains of Iran. Long story. We got intelligence, so we flew into Tehran. We went 55 miles northwest up into the Elburz Mountains. We got up to the area we thought the object was. We got up to 13,125 feet. There it was, and this sticking out of the side of a mountain. We got up to it. It looked like it could have been the side of a ship because of the way the planking was at one point. But it was rock. So we pulled some samples off it. We brought them back to the United States, and 5 out of the 9 samples tested as petrified wood. But we can't prove it's Noah's Ark because it didn't say USS Noah on the side. Right? There's just no way of knowing. If you want more on that trip, you can go to crossexamined.org and click on resources, and you can go over to Cornuke's website. He has a big write-up on it, baseinstitute.org. A lot of people think that miracles don't occur like resurrections. Everyone they know who's dead is still dead. How can you believe in a resurrection? That seems outlandish. And for some reason, the big miracle problem in the Bible for people is Jonah. Is that a tale of a whale or a whale of a tale? What's the deal with Jonah? How can you believe that? Now, what is the greatest miracle in the Bible? Most people will say, well, it's the resurrection. And most people will admit, yeah, resurrection's got to be it. Resurrection's not the greatest miracle in the Bible. Somebody just mentioned it. What is the greatest miracle in the Bible? The greatest miracle in the Bible is the first verse. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If that verse is true, then every other verse is at least believable. If God can create the universe out of nothing, can he do whatever he wants that's not logically impossible inside the universe? Of course. Well, the interesting thing is, if you were here last time, we now have good scientific evidence that the first verse of the Bible is indeed true. That in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If that's so, can he do the Noah miracle? If he can create the universe out of nothing? Of course. Can he resurrect Jesus from the dead if he can create the whole universe out of nothing? And Jesus as well? Jesus' manly human body? Of course. Can he do the Jonah miracle if he can create the universe out of nothing? Of course, this is easy for a God who can create the universe out of nothing. In fact, many think that Jonah actually died in the fish. Why? Well, Jesus refers to Jonah. Just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the great fish, I'll be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. That Jonah actually was killed and Jesus resurrected, or God resurrected him. If God exists, and the first verse of the Bible is true, every other verse is at least possible. Now, some of you are going, well, you just said something that I don't know if it's true. You just said that God can do whatever he wants. It's not logically impossible. Are you saying there's some things God can't do? Yeah, there's some things God can't do. Like what? Well, he can't create a square circle. Why? There's no such thing. It's a logical contradiction. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a square circle. He can't create a married bachelor. He can't create a one-ended stick. He can't create an honest politician. There are just some things that are too hard for God. He can't go out of existence. He can't lie. He can't change. In fact, there are some things you can do and I can do that he can't do. Like we can change. He can't change. Why not? Well, we can change. We can become better or worse. If God changes, the only way he can go is from perfection to imperfection, so he can't change. He can't get any better. He's already perfect. So there's some things you can do that God can't. If he were to change, he wouldn't be God. He can't lie. He can't go out of existence. There are some things that God can't do, and if he could do them, he wouldn't be God. He wouldn't be the perfect, unchangeable standard of all things. But if God can create the universe out of nothing, he can do any of these things easily. Notice, by the way, as I just mentioned, Jesus, if the New Testament documents are reliable, he related two of the most controversial miracles in the Old Testament to his own life, Noah and Jonah. Do you think Jesus thought that Noah and Jonah were historical or hysterical? He thought they were historical. You know, it amazes me when people say, I don't believe in miracles. I go, why don't you look around? You're living in one. This universe is a miracle. It came into existence out of nothing. If that miracle's true, every other miracle in the Bible is at least possible. I'm not saying every one of them has occurred at this point. I think we can draw that conclusion later. I'm simply saying it's possible at this point. That's all. Because the greatest miracle has already occurred. C.S. Lewis put it best, as he always did. If we admit God, must we admit miracles? Indeed, you have no security against it. That is the bargain. If God exists, miracles are indeed possible. Now you say, wait a minute, Frank, have you ever heard of this guy, David Hume? How many in here have ever heard of David Hume? Okay, a good portion of us. David Hume has had an impact on your thinking even though you don't know him, or you may have never heard of him. Hume was the greatest skeptic, or one of the great skeptics of the Enlightenment. He was the only real true atheist. And Hume came up with an argument against miracles that is still being used in the university today, even though it's a flawed argument. Hume died in 1776. Easy to remember Hume. Here is the argument that he came up against miracles, and Hitchens even tried to use this against me in our first debate. And luckily I talk on this stuff all the time, so I was able to refute it. But here's Hume's argument against miracles. He said, natural law is by definition a description of a regular occurrence. You keep dropping stuff all over the place, and you notice that everything you drop goes to the ground. You make the inductive observation that everything you drop goes to the ground, and then you draw a general conclusion that there must be some sort of force out there. You call it gravity, okay? It's a natural law. It happens over and over again. It's repeatable with a pattern. Natural law is by definition a description of a regular occurrence. Seems right. Second, a miracle is by definition a rare occurrence. I know that many a police officer has heard of a virgin birth on occasion, or a judge hears about a virgin birth, but the guy still pays anyway, right? Virgin births are rare, okay? They don't happen over and over again. In fact, a miracle has to be rare. If miracles occurred all the time, we would think they were some sort of natural phenomenon, wouldn't we? We'd think there's some sort of natural law. So miracles have to be rare. If resurrections occurred every day, what would the resurrection of Christ mean to us? Nothing in particular. So miracles have to be rare to get our attention. They can't happen all the time. Otherwise, they lose their value in terms of getting us to believe that this is from God. Thirdly, the evidence for the regular is always greater than that for the rare. Man, we see that almost every football game we watch, don't we? We see a play from 3 different angles as many times as we want in all different speeds, but the ref sees it full speed once from one angle, has to make the call. The evidence for the regular, our different angles over and over again, is better than his, because he only saw it once, right? Evidence for the regular always greater than that for the rare. Premise number 4, a wise man always bases his belief on the greater evidence. That seems axiomatic. You're not going to base your belief on the lesser evidence. So here is Hume's conclusion. Therefore, a wise man should never believe in miracles. Now, unless there's something wrong with one of those first 4 premises, that conclusion necessarily follows. There is something wrong with one of these premises. Can anyone see the problem with one of these 4 premises? Which premise is it that's wrong? Those of you that have not been in my class. No, 4 is good. 1, 2. Finally, who said 3? Yes, 3 over there. A couple of people said 3. Julie, you said 3? 3. 3 is the problem. Exactly the problem. Here is the real truth. The evidence for regular events is not always greater than that for the rare. Not always greater than that for the rare. Let me give you some examples to show you why this is the case. Yeah, sometimes evidence for regular events is greater than that for the rare, but sometimes it's not. And what we're going to do is we're going to take examples from Hume's own worldview. If Hume were here today as an atheist, he would believe these things that I'm about to put up on the screen, but they're not rare, or they're not regular events. They're rare events. So why would Hume believe them if this premise is true? Well, the premise isn't true, because evidence for regular events is not always greater than that for the rare. If Hume were here today, he would believe in the Big Bang. But the Big Bang is not based on regular events. If it happened at all, it happened only once. It's not the Big Bang, 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 bang theory, okay? You can't go in the laboratory and look at it over and over and over and over again. Hey, let's watch it bang again. No. All right? It's a rare event, yet Hume would believe it. Secondly, the origin of life on Earth does not occur regularly. Yet we're all here. Pasteur's beaker is still sterile, yet we all believe that spontaneous generation happened at one point. Either somebody intelligently turned non-life into life, or it happened without intelligence. But it's a rare event, right? It doesn't happen all the time. Yet all of us believe it occurred because we're here. So it had to happen at one point, either with intelligence or without, but it's not a regular event. Can't go in the laboratory and recreate it. And by the way, if we ever do create a life in the laboratory, and let me just point this out. You are going to hear within the next couple of years that Craig Ventnor out at the La Jolla Institute, I can't remember the name of the thing, the think tank he's with, he is going to make synthetic life. You're going to hear about this. It's going to come out. And everyone's going to go, oh, this is evidence for evolution. Let me tell you right now, it won't be evidence at all for evolution. Why not? Because he's an intelligent designer. If we ever create life in the laboratory, it'll prove creation. Why? Because it took a lot of intelligence to do it. That's right. He's going to start with somebody else's material and inject it, and so it's not going to prove. When you hear about it, don't go, oh no, God doesn't exist. It's just going to show that it takes a lot of intelligence to do. Number 3, macroevolution cannot be repeated. If it happened at all, it happened only once. But you can't see the goo to UV of the zoo, and you can't go in the laboratory and repeat it. It happened, if it happened at all, it happened only once, yet he would believe it. And then finally, as C.S. Lewis observed, he said the entire history of the earth cannot be repeated. Those of you that were here a week ago when we went through the first 4 segments, you remember it occurred, yet it's a singular event. You can't go back in time and observe it over and over again. Yet you have good reason to believe it occurred. You're an eyewitness. You were there. In fact, if Hume were consistent, Hume shouldn't even believe in his own birth. Why? Because it happened only once. You can't go in the laboratory and recreate it. So Hume's premise, number 3, is wrong, which means his whole argument crumbles. By the way, there's other problems with Hume's argument that we go through in the book, but just notice this, that Hume isn't really talking about the possibility of miracles. What's he talking about here? He's talking about the believability of miracles. He's saying a wise man shouldn't believe in miracles. Well, wait. There's something wrong with an argument that tells you not to believe something that may have actually happened. So he's not even dealing with the actuality of miracles. He's dealing with the believability of them, and even there he gets it wrong. Yet this argument is still the argument used by atheists in the universities today. And it's fallacious. So you need to be aware of it. You say, well, wait, why don't more atheists believe in miracles then? You see this guy right here? This is Richard Lewontin, who is an atheist, a Darwinist, a Marxist. He's got a lot of ists after his name. He teaches at Harvard University, or at least he did. I don't know if he's still there. Back in 1997, he had a very honest moment when he wrote in the New York Times Review of Books the real reason why he and many of his colleagues don't believe in miracles. And this is a short quote. There's a longer quote, but this gets to the heart of it. The entire quote's in the book. Here's what he said. He said, it's not that the methods and institutions of science somehow compel us to accept a material explanation of the phenomenal world, but on the contrary, that we are forced by our a priori, meaning our prior adherence to material causes, for we cannot allow a divine foot in the door. Wait a minute. Why can't we let a divine foot in the door? Well, if God gets involved, then we're no longer seen as the new priests who dispense truth to the general public, scientists, that is. If God gets his foot in the door, then we're not going to get grant money from the government to do our work. If God gets his foot in the door, we're not going to look good to our materialist colleagues at cocktail parties. If God gets his foot in the door, then that means I got to bow my knee to a creator. I don't want to do that. Now, I'm not saying this is true of all atheists. I'm just saying this is a known motivation for several of them. In fact, Thomas Nagel at NYU, who's an atheistic philosopher, he said, I have a cosmic authority problem. And he said, I think Christopher Hitchens had one. Christopher's died since. And I think Richard Dawkins has a cosmic authority problem. He doesn't want God to exist. He doesn't want to bow his knee to a creator. The elephant in the room, as I mentioned last time, is morality. People don't want God to exist, many of them don't, because they want to do their own thing. This is what Paul talks about in Romans chapter 1. One of the most relevant passages about our culture is Romans chapter 1, verses 18 to 32. Just go read that tonight, and you'll see men suppress the truth in unrighteousness so they can go their own way. This is why you have to ask the two questions I brought up last time for people who are not believers. Question number one. If I ask you a serious question, will you give me a brutally honest answer? Just about everyone always says yes. Question number two. If Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? As I mentioned to you last time, I've had several people yell back at me, no! No? You claim to be an atheist, a beacon of reason. And I ask you if something were true, would you believe it? And you say no? How is that rational? It's not rational. It's volitional. They don't want it to be true. Ron Carlson, I don't know if I mentioned this last time. I do so many talks on this. Forgive me if I repeat myself, but he was a gentleman that would go to different colleges and he would present problems with Darwinism. And he went to a biology class once. He was invited by the professor. He gave a whole talk on Darwinism, the problems with it. And he went to lunch with the professor afterwards and he said to the professor, what do you think of my lecture? And the guy said, well, yeah, I think what you say is true, Ron. I think there are big problems with Darwinism. He said, but I'm going to keep teaching Darwinism anyway. And Ron said, well, why would you do that? And he said, because Darwinism's morally comfortable. If it is true we came from slimy green algae, then I can sleep with whomever I want to sleep with. What's he going to say to that? You thought science was objective, didn't you? It's not. It's only as objective as the scientists, because science doesn't say anything, scientists do. You guys have to remember that. Now, of course, we could be biased too. Maybe we're interpreting the data improperly, correct? That could be the case. We've got to be aware of that. The people we need to worry about quite often, are ourselves, because we may just be seeing things we want to see, right? We've got to be fair and honest. There's a lot more in the book on miracles and different types of things that Christians call miracles that aren't really miracles. Let me just mention one of them, just so we can be precise with our language. I can't go through all 6 different unusual events that the book talks about, but one of the things that we call a miracle isn't really a miracle. It's called divine providence. What's divine providence? That's when God gets involved but doesn't overpower or supersede a natural law. Like, for example, the fog at Normandy may have been God involved because it obscured our attack against the Nazis, but it wasn't a miracle. Why? Because fog happens all the time. If the young men had assaulted the beach and bullets bounced off their chests, that would have been a miracle. But this was divine providence. It's not a miracle that you met your wife or you met your husband. In fact, now you're probably going, yeah, I know it wasn't. No. but back then you thought it was. No, God may have prearranged events so it happened, but he didn't overpower or suspend a natural law. He used natural circumstances and natural forces to accomplish it. So we have to be careful when we use the word miracle. Miracles in the Bible are clear, direct acts of God, where somebody is risen from the dead due to a truth claim made by an apostle or by Jesus, or somebody walks on water, or somebody is healed instantaneously of a disease they've had their entire life. Those are miracles. Things that happen in our lives, maybe some of those things have happened in your life. I'm not saying they haven't. I'm saying, but most of the time when we call something a miracle, it's not really a miracle. It's God involved, but he's not overpowering or superseding a natural law. He's working indirectly through those forces. All right? Again, more in the book on that. The main point from this section: if God exists, miracles are possible. The greatest miracle has already occurred, the creation of the universe out of nothing. So now all we need to see is, have any other miracles occurred since the first one? And for that, we got to move on to, is the New Testament true?